No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live, episode number 43. And the Labour government wants to criminalise criticism of Islam in the most chilling crackdown on free speech in Two Tier Keir's authoritarian Britain. So do you think they can define Islamophobia? Hell no. Reform UK's Lee Anderson owned the UK's Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner during a humiliating Westminster appearance. This was his question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could the Secretary of State please explain to me and the House what the government's definition of Islamophobia actually is?
And here's how she answered. Just joking, but I will show you a pathetic word salad in my digest next. Then my superstar panel, the independent journalist Tom Sullivan and Reform UK's Howard Cox weigh in. Also coming up on the show today, did the justice system and government pile pressure on the housewife of a Conservative politician, Lucy Connolly, to plead guilty over a post on X by keeping her locked up? And the truth about Prince Harry's plan to return to the UK and his very troubled marriage with Meghan Markle with his biographer, Angela Levin. Then we've got a royal special in our uncancelled after show. So much more on Harry, Meghan, William, Catherine, the late Queen, Charles, all of them. From the irrepressible and incomparable Angela Levin, a big part of our Outspoken family. You can register to watch on our website right now at www.outspoken.live. It is a safe space, free of censorship. Your support at just £5 a month not only gives you 30 minutes of extra content every single weekday, it allows me to continue making this independent daily news show. But now, let's go. We know that this authoritarian Labour government under Two Tier Keir Starmer wants to criminalise speech that doesn't serve their political purposes. Just take that in for a moment. It's terrifying. So not content having jailed ordinary Brits for inartfully expressing their fury over mass immigration on the day of the Southport massacre, it is now looking to make so-called Islamophobia illegal. I think that's chilling, especially for me as a gay man. I mean, what is the government saying? Am I not allowed to oppose a religion that simply doesn't believe that I should be able to exist? I'm sure many women feel the same way. So Reform UK's Lee Anderson put a simple but absolutely critical question on this to the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could the Secretary of State please explain to me and the House what the government's definition of Islamophobia actually is? Secretary of State.
Well, I say to the honourable member that a new definition must be given careful consideration so that it comprehensively reflects multiple perspectives and considers potential implications for different communities. And we're actively considering our approach to Islamophobia, including definitions, and we'll provide further updates on this in due course.
Do you know what? I think that word salad was so pathetic, so non-committal, that perhaps Angela Rayner, and I didn't think I'd ever say this, would be better off dancing some more back in Ibiza. Okay. But back to the serious issue. Lee described the situation as unbelievable, bemoaning, quote, "You couldn't make this up," before labelling Rayner and her ilk as lunatics during a feisty appearance on GB News.
I mean, Angela Rayner was banging on about Islamophobia, and now the Labour Party are going hell for leather to root out Islamophobia. They're going to legislate, against Islamophobia. So I decided to ask a really difficult question, Martin, which was, I asked her to define what Islamophobia actually meant, and she couldn't tell me. The lunatics have taken over the asylum.
It's been posted on social media now. You put it out there. It's out of over 500,000 clips. I think it's a fair question to ask what something is, to define something, if that could mean people getting lengthy criminal records, because that seems to be the direction of travel. You think that this argument about free speech over the summer has taken a dramatic downturn?
Well, it does. I mean, I sat in a studio just a few months ago, Martin, before the general election, discussing Islamophobia and some of the comments I made about Mayor Khan. And I said at the time, I'd asked many MPs from all parties to define what Islamophobia actually meant. Nobody can tell you. Yet they're going to legislate against something that they don't know what it is. It's absolute madness. I mean,
I completely agree with Lee on this. It is absolute madness. It's actually Orwellian to say you intend to make something you literally cannot define illegal. Turning Point UK agrees, posting on X, despite Labour constantly harping on about quote-unquote Islamophobia, they can't define it. How can people be arrested and jailed for something the government can't even define? But what we can increasingly define is the Islamic threat to the UK. A threat which actually, if we're honest, and the MSM won't talk about this, but it wants to destroy much of what we have built up culturally and religiously while challenging our tolerant society. There's been so many examples of this lately, but I want you to look at this video.
Here is not Salwar Kameez. This Salwar Kameez has been made to turn into for the streets. I'll explain to you why. What the is this? What the is this? Sis, why is your Salwar 3/4? 3/4 the Salwar, yeah? Boom, now you can see through the mother arms.
A British man, horrified, angry, sweary about the fact that that outfit showed off a woman's ankle. Now, our superstar panellist, Alani Dowding, posted that on X and responded saying, if Angela Rayner wants to redefine Islamophobia, how about this? I am very worried and afraid of men who get this angry and triggered at seeing a woman's ankle and arms. Just like the 3 women violently assaulted at a petrol station, Mohammed Hassan didn't like how they dressed. And she's right to point that out. I will also point out that Mohammed Hassan escaped jail, even though he beat up 3 women at a petrol station because of how they were dressed. Now, Darren Grimes posted a video of what looked like London's Whitechapel tube station with the caption, "Would you know this was London if you had been in a coma since the 1950s and woke up today?" Watch this and just have a think about that question.
Let me show you what we do.
The acclaimed independent journalist Andy No posted video of an Islamic rally in London at the weekend. London. Now, religious leaders have been broadly quiet on the destruction of the West. I mean, the Pope, do you remember last week he suggested it is actually morally wrong not to accept migrants? But perhaps things could be changing. Listen to the Catholic Bishop Athanasius Schneider, who has warned Europe of the mass Islamization. Sorry, that's a mouthful going on. Watch.
Yes, this is very serious. Now we are witnessing an invasion. They are not refugees. No, this is an invasion of mass Islamization of Europe, which already went on for at minimum 50, 60 years, Islamization in Europe. But now it is in mass. It is very evident. And so this is a global political agenda by the powerful of the world to destroy Europe culturally and religiously. I mean, to destroy Christianity ultimately in Europe, with the help of the Islamic massive Islamic population. And I was reading recently an article of a sociologist who made a calculation that maybe in 30 or 40 years, when it's now going on, so the majority of the population of Europe will be Islamic. Europe will be Islamic when this will go on, because the European people have almost no children, 1 or 2. The Muslims there, they have 5, 6 to 10 children. And so it is, you can only make mathematics, and then you can see that they will be in the majority.
Now, it's not palatable for some reason to have that discussion in polite society, certainly not the mainstream media or amongst the political elites. But according to that bishop, there is now a global agenda to destroy Europe culturally and religiously. Yes, our government's priority isn't protecting our borders or our culture, but rather trying to punish those of us who raise issues with things like the introduction of Sharia law through the back door in the UK. To react to that and all of the day's big stories, let me bring in my superstar panel. And today I'm delighted to be joined by one of our favourites, Reform UK's Howard Cox, the brilliant man behind the Fair Fuel campaign, who spends his life fighting for the rights of motorists, among other things too. And joining us for the first time, a friend of mine, the independent journalist Tom Sullivan. Great to have you both here. So Howard Cox, great for your party there, actually challenging, actually opposing this government, which is very unpopular because the Conservatives have just completely disappeared. Did you think that Lee Anderson humiliated Angela Rayner? I mean, he calls her a lunatic because she simply couldn't define Islamophobia in any way. She was stumped.
You're absolutely right, Dan, and thanks for having us on again. Lee had it spot on, as usual. I'm a good friend of Lee's. I work with Lee, and you watch me, he always hits things the nail on the head perfectly with any situation. And he's quite right to say that the lunatics have taken over the asylum. That's what's happening. This amoebic group of new front benchers, can't answer questions. And it's not just about Islamophobia, it's other things like net zero. When you ask questions to someone like Ed Miliband, he can't answer questions. They keep coming back, well, we've got the mandate from the people. What they forget is they haven't got the mandate from the people. It's because most people didn't turn up to vote.
Chris Rose posted on X about this. Lee Anderson asked a simple question for the Secretary of State to clarify their official definition of Islamophobia. Labour plan to root out something they can't even define. Complete word salad from Angela Rayner. And Tom Sullivan, I'm so concerned about this because if you make Islamophobia illegal, does that mean that as a gay man, I can't say that this is a religion, this is a doctrine that I do not support because it literally advocates for my destruction?
Well, this is the thing, Dan. There's so many of these words: racist, fascist, misogynist, sexist, Islamophobic. The list just grows every day, which are just used to shut people down and stop conversations from going on. And in answer to your question, Lee Anderson did own Angela Rayner, and he has formed for it. And it reminded me of an incident a few months ago where he was chairing a select committee, and there was the chief of the Dorset Fire Brigade Authority or something, and she had stated that her own force was institutionally racist. And Lee Anderson said, okay, can you give me an example of some unfair advantages that white people have in your force? And she said, what do you mean? And he repeated it, and she goes, oh, there aren't any. And then he said, well, how is it institutionally racist? And the answer she gave was exactly as you just said. Oh, I'll have to get back to you on that. So all these words, they're just thrown around to, control speech. I mean, the chairman of Howard's party, Reform UK, is a practicing Muslim of Pakistani origin. I'm of half Turkish origin. My grandparents and extended family are Muslim. Okay, it's not about being having any type of hatred or whatever. It's simply about being able to talk about what is going on in our country. And the more they restrict us from talking about that, the more people will kind of fester in the shadows and in the corners. And eventually it will blow up, as it inevitably does. And we have, kind of violent scenes that we saw a few weeks ago.
Indeed. And that's why Starmer, I think, has decided his solution is to crack down on free speech, is to crack down on freedom of expression. And I believe making Islamophobia illegal is part of that. But he's also decided there's a very clear bogeyman. And his bogeyman that can be blamed for everything is the so-called far right. Now, who does he mean? Who does he mean? Have a think about that, but watch what he had to say.
I am worried about the far right. I'm worried about populism and nationalism and the politics of the easy answer, the snake oil, if you like. And I think it's very important that we have a debate about how we confront that. My own personal view is that through delivery, through showing that there are progressive democratic answers to the many challenges we face is the way forward. But yes, that's a discussion that I'm very keen to have because I think it's a very real threat. I am worried.
Now, Howard, the laughable thing about that is, he's talking about you. He's talking about Reform UK. He's talking about Nigel Farage. Now, you're a completely mainstream political party. So this is nuts.
Absolutely right. I mean, they can't define Islamophobia, and they can't seem to define far right. They're just throwing this out because there's a bunch of thugs and there's very few minimal sort of characters, but they forget there's a bunch of people in this country, the majority, who are angry, and they're being classified as far right. It's absolute farcical, and I get very insulted by it because I'm a Thatcherite. There, I've said it. Oh dear, what am I? I must be far right. But what I want is a low taxes, small state, all those things that defend our borders. Good defence. In terms of our army, etc. All those sorts of things. If that is far right, then I'm far right, and I'm proud to be.
I mean, Tom, sorry, finish your point, Howard.
No, carry on. Go on.
Well, I was just going to say, it's a really interesting point, isn't it, Tom? If Margaret Thatcher were alive today, Starmer would call her far right.
Yeah, because she was, as he just said in that clip you played, a populist and a nationalist. I mean, in my eyes, populist is someone who takes on the concerns of the majority of people, and a nationalist is someone who puts the interests of the nation and the cohesion of the nation above most other things. I think they're great things. I'm worried that we have a prime minister who thinks they are bad things, and I would be considered far right, Dan. I'm told that I'm far right, fascist, every ist you can imagine. And the funny thing is, 9 times out of 10, the people who tell me this are, straight, white, male, privileged, middle class, whatever. And, as I alluded to, I tick quite a lot of, diversity tick boxes. And I just find it funny that I'm the one kind of, defending populism and nationalism. And I have people calling me who, I don't know, I thought I'm a victim in their oppression Olympics, but they're calling me Islamophobic. I'm like, well, I'm the one from a Muslim background, not you. It's insane.
Oppression Olympics. I love that. And actually, it leads very nicely to a campaign that Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, has launched today, because he believes what you're talking about, Tom, that sort of middle-class shame about what it means to be British and about populism and about our history actually comes from education and the fact that young folk are having their minds poisoned. So watch Nigel set up why he feels this way.
During the general election, I said again and again, we're a party that's going to fight against the poisoning of the minds of our young people. Why did I say that? Well, very simple, because the march of the left through all of our educational institutions has been quite extraordinary. And I talked about the fact, we say, oh, aren't we terrible? We're the only country that ever took part in slavery, without telling anybody that actually it was the Royal Navy at huge cost that drove slavery off the high seas, and people need to be taught balance. We're teaching kids now the empire was truly evil. Well, a lot of countries around Europe have had empires, but none of them have a commonwealth. None of them actually have a relationship with their former colonies. And so much, when you think about this little island and the incredible history that we've had, the amazing things that we've done for the world, in the world, be it innovation, be it development, you could even argue the spread of Christianity, so many things that we've done genuinely to help people. And yet, our kids are being told everything about our past is poisonous. Well, those chickens are coming home to roost.
Now, what prompted Nigel talking about this was the British Social Attitudes Survey, which has been running for 4 decades. And in 2013, when Brits were asked whether they were proud or very proud of Britain's history, 86% of people said yes. That has now fallen to 64%. But Nigel is most disturbed about the under 25 age group because it has fallen to below 40%, which means 60% of youngsters have essentially no respect or love for our country's history, Howard Cox, which is an insane thing, given this is something that we are teaching our kids. We are teaching our kids to be ashamed of the UK.
Well, as you know, Dan, and just like you in terms of the issue about homosexuality and being rejected in this country, I've got a daughter, and she lives with a gay friend of hers, and I'm proud of her and that sort of thing. But when you talk to them about anything to do with history or what's happened to our past, I talk to youngsters, her friends, a lot of their friends, etc. They've never been taught history of England. They've been taught about Middle East issues, or they're talking about China and how great China is, etc. for the world. All those sorts of things are being told to them. They are not taught. In fact, I even spoke to one person and said, "What do you know what happened in World War II?" And the response was, "Oh, sorry, who won that one?" That, and then you start talking about Churchill and things like that. Oh, sorry, who's that? Oh, he's a horrible person, isn't he? He killed people out in India and all those sorts of things. All this mischievous comments that come out, but no positivity about being proud British. You guys are young. I'm 70 years of age this year, and all I can say is I'm glad I'm there, because the next 20 or 30 years of my life, I'm going to be living in this world, Dan. I'm sorry, mate.
I'm sort of in the middle. I'm in the middle, but actually Nigel does talk a little bit about that World War II thing, Howard, because I think his prescription is that the further we get away from that, the more people lose pride in being British. And I think it's true. I mean, one of the biggest lessons for me growing up was speaking to my 3 grandparents who all fought in World War II. And it taught me so much. And it made me really appreciate what they did and the life that they gave us, which is something that obviously the younger generations don't have. So, Tom, I'll come to you, but first, watch what Nigel had to say about this.
And if you tell people the country is awful, that it stands for bad things, well, why should they respect the rule of law? Why should they have any respect for law and order? This is part of societal decline. It's part of social decline. It's something we should be deeply worried about. And I suspect now that Labour are in, the attacks on our past, on our culture, on who we are going to get even worse. So, folks, just think about it. Are you proud of what your forebears did? And yes, I know the Second World War generation are dying out, so I understand why there might be slightly less pride in our immediate past. If your father or your mother was involved in the war, if your family lost people in either one of the wars, I do understand for a younger generation that is further away. But still, believe you me, the root of this problem is the poisoning of our kids' minds. And we in Reform are unafraid to stand up and say that, and to point the finger, not just at this Labour government, but at a Tory party that has allowed all of this to happen.
Tom Sullivan, your view?
Well, I know this for a fact because 10 years ago I was in sixth form, and I remember very clearly in London, that's where I was born and grew up, it wasn't cool to be white. People would say stuff like white people don't have a culture, and this was kind of taken as fact and reinforced by teachers in the classroom. We would talk about the Cuban Revolution and the evil of the British colonialists in Kenya, and then World War II, and apart from that there was, nothing else. I mean, I've lived in Eastern Europe, I've lived in the Middle East, and when people have national pride, you can feel it in the air. And it's almost like the glue which kind of holds a society together. And as you can imagine, there are regions of the world with a lot more deprivation and instability as us. And that is the glue that holds them together. And I've obviously taken that for granted, and that glue is being watered down. And I experienced that myself. So God knows what it's like 10 years later from when I was in school. But I know that as a fact, and I completely agree with Nigel.
Great stuff. Now, look, there is growing outrage about the jailing of Lucy Connolly, the wife of the Conservative politician who has been remanded in custody for weeks because of a post on X that she made on the day of the Southport massacre. Yesterday, Raymond Connolly, who we'll hear from shortly, he is her councillor husband, a member of the Conservative Party, said that she was so overwhelmed on the day of the Southport massacre because she had lost a child herself. She's not racist. She regrets the post. And Chris Rose has made the very wise point today. While Lucy Connolly has remained on remand and about to be sentenced for social media posts, Hope Not Hate's Nick Lowles is still free after posting misinformation. If a two-tier system didn't exist, then he would be in jail now for 2 to 3 years. Meanwhile, patriots of Britain continue to protest outside jails. Now, Tom Sullivan, I feel very strongly about this. I believe that Lucy Connolly is a political prisoner. I do not believe for a single second that her post on X was appropriate, but she didn't specifically incite violence against an individual or a specific organisation or institution. She inartfully expressed her anger about the Southport massacre on the day, yet she is locked up, even though she clearly poses no risk to society, yet we have seen child rapists, violent criminals released on our streets. Why is the mainstream media not talking about this issue at all?
Well, isn't it funny, Dan, how that same mainstream media, which day in, day out for months, years on end, pushed absolute lies and disinformation during the COVID era, along with the politicians, they haven't been held to account for their words, which, probably incited people to make decisions which might have led to death. Not only have they not been held to account, they never will be, and now they're turning the guns on other people. Obviously, there is no excuse for criminality, but in my view, the people who should be, punished for a hotel being set on fire are the people who set the hotel on fire, not a person who doesn't have a public profile, who, in the heat of the moment, wrote something ill-advised, shall we say. And
well, this guy on screen, he posted 3 memes.
Yeah, I know.
There's
a guy called Sam Mellier who's still in prison for printing stickers saying it's okay to be white.
That was before the riots.
Yeah, exactly. And then we go around and lecture the world for, oh, you don't have freedom of speech, and tell other people how to behave. It's ridiculous. They just, after a week or 2 weeks of saying the prisons are full, we're going to have to let out violent rapists and murderers. Sorry, guys. They're like, oh, yeah, don't worry. We've got loads of room now. So all you guys who tweeted against our policy, we're going to put you in there. It is insane. I wouldn't, in my worst nightmare, I wasn't looking forward to this government, but I would have not even imagined that they would get to this stage. And instead of sitting back like adults and saying, okay, what are the structural issues here? How have we got to this situation in our society? Let's zoom out and take a step back. Let's see what the legitimate concerns are. They've literally just gone in and said, no, you're racist, you're far right, in you go. And I don't really know where it goes from here.
I'm so with you on all of that. Howard Cox, a lot of folk are saying, why did Lucy Connolly and people like her plead guilty? But the problem is, I believe there is interference here. There is political interference in the justice system, because why has she been remanded in custody? Why has she been locked up in jail for weeks on end? Because that is the system pressuring her to plead guilty. Even though there's no reason for her to be remanded in custody, she poses no threat to society.
You're absolutely right. I've got no idea about why this has happened. The point is, she was angry, and we've all done silly, angry things. I mean, I should be arrested. I should be in prison. 15 years of some of the social media, particularly on my attack on the Mayor of London, who I believe is a pathological liar. And I've said that sort of thing. I've been waiting for a knock on the door from his lawyers to go for me and that sort of thing. I just do not understand, Dan, Tom, what is going on in this country. What I do believe, because when I talk to Labour MPs, and okay, I'm bringing this back to some of the motoring things I do. You've had it for too good for the last 15 years, Howard Cox. You've done a cracking job in public affairs campaigning, but you're not going to have it any good. They're not talking objectively what the changes they're going to do to the economy or our lives would do to our lives. They just got this ideology, which I believe is fundamentally trying to destroy the right. Obviously, Ben Habib, my good friend Ben, he did actually want to obliterate the Tories. Well, I'm afraid they are a uni party. The two of them are, they're con-socialists. Yeah. That's our problem at the moment. As I said, I'm a Thatcherite. And we've got the leadership election, the 6 leaders for the Tory party. I can't see anyone. I was invited to Priti Patel. And the reason why she invited me, because I'm a public affairs campaigner and she wants motorists on the side. She's not daft, and I don't blame her for that. But fundamentally, what Starmer's doing to this country and the rest of his ilk is to destroy any semblance of right of centre. That's what they're doing.
No, indeed. Because, look, I have said for a long time that under Rishi Sunak, the Conservatives became a left-wing party. The problem is that Labour is a hard left party. But look, I just want to bring this back to Lucy Connolly for 1 second and show you the video of Raymond Connolly. Now, he is the Conservative councillor, and I am convinced that Lucy Connolly, remember, she's a childminder, she's a housewife, she has no real public profile. I'm convinced that the reason the CPS and the police went so hard on her was because of her relationship with Raymond Connolly. So watch what he had to say.
She knows that she's overstepped the mark and there's consequences for it. So hopefully she'll be able to learn from this and move on with her life.
What she said about it to you now, reflecting on obviously what happened and what she did?
It's just a moment of, an upset housewife, really. Just seeing children in the reports with all the misinformation, and just got dragged into it. And obviously she regrets it. She did a couple of hours after she'd put the link up, but obviously it came back on a week or so later. And then obviously underneath it, and her husband's a Tory councillor, and here we are today.
Does she accept that the tweet was racist?
I don't think she is not that person. I'm not too sure, really. I mean, all I know is she's not that person. She's probably the opposite to that, actually.
And I mean, Tom, the issue is, if the establishment really starts thinking that we should lock people up for a quote-unquote racist social media post, well, I'm sorry, we're going to see thousands of pro-Hamas, Jewish-hating tweeters in prison too. We've got to be very careful about this slippery slope.
Speaking about slippery, Dan, I don't know who that journalist was, but after hearing, that
Sly News, of course, Sly News.
Of course, Sly News. There we go. A person whose wife, I understand they've gone through a lot of stuff with their child, and then, person's wife gone through this situation, and he explained it very calmly. And all she said was, but do you accept that she's racist? And I said it to you the other day, Dan, this is what journalists don't understand, that they are the only profession hated even more than politicians. And I say this as a journalist to you, another journalist. And
I agree. I'm disgusted by my profession because exactly, what do you want the guy to say? Oh yeah, my wife's racist. Of course she's not. It's ludicrous. No, she was incredibly upset on the day of the Southport massacre. She made an inartful post on it, as lots of people did. We should believe in free speech in this country as the home of the Magna Carta. But what is crazy is that I'm seeing increasingly on the left a deranged push to jail their political enemies. This is serious. So Mike Solana actually pointed this one out to me because I'm not a regular reader of The Guardian. You won't be surprised to know. But he wrote, this is the third time in 2 weeks The Guardian has requested the arrest of Elon Musk for refusing to censor political speech. So I actually went and I dug up the article in question. I've got it for you. So the headline was, Elon Musk is out of control. Here's how to rein him in. It's by Robert Wright. I read the whole thing. But probably the most critical point is point number 3. This column is nuts. I promise you, it's so mad. And listen to this. Regulators around the world should threaten Musk with arrest if he doesn't stop disseminating lies and hate on X. Global regulators may be on the way to doing this, as evidenced by the 24th of August arrest in France of Pavel Durov, who founded the online communications tool Telegram. Like Musk, Durov has styled himself as a free speech absolutist, but we'll now lock him up. It's just nuts. Howard, what do you make of it?
Well, it's very simple. Thank heavens for Elon Musk, in my opinion. The guy is incredible what he's done. I wasn't a great fan of him. I'm not a great fan of his Tesla cars. But in terms of actually what he's trying to do, we have a free speech platform out here at the moment in time. And if we didn't have that free speech platform, we'd have nothing, because the mainstream media, and you guys, you journalists, don't be hard on yourself. There's a lot worse than you guys out there on the left. And
I'm cancelled in the mainstream now, so I expose them. And one of the reasons I was cancelled by the mainstream media was because I exposed them. But I just find it astonishing, Tom, that The Guardian can't see how they're acting like Vladimir Putin, who is the bloke who they hate most, right? So The Guardian constantly go on about Putin because they're so horrified by his treatment of journalists. But they are advocating for Elon Musk, to be imprisoned.
100%.
How are they any different?
What I would say, Dan, is, it's quite tempting to think, oh yeah, this is obviously bad, but let's keep things in perspective and everything. Let's not forget, just a couple years ago, how the media whipped people up in the COVID era, and the authoritarianism that we saw, and the anger that was whipped up by our demagogue politicians. They can do it again, and we have to be prepared for that. We need to push back immediately. We need to say, we're not going to fall for this again. We're not going to have you turn people on people, make people snitching people. First it was granny killer, now it's far right. It's all the same thing. It's the agenda that they push to divide and rule, something that was invented by us. So we should be, hypersensitive to that. And it's not a laughing matter. Honestly, it's very scary. And you're absolutely right. The Guardian, not just them, our entire mainstream media is guilty of it. They tell us, look at Russia, look at China, look at Iran, look how they treat people, look how they lock people up. I was traveling around, Eastern Europe a few weeks ago, and I spent, a few weeks in Russia, actually. And people were shocked when I told them, we have people in jail for printing stickers saying it's okay to be white. They looked at me, they were like, one person actually said to me, who's a liberal journalist, she goes, I thought, and I gave her a copy of, the Spectator and the Critic and things that I brought with me. And she read it and she said, I thought all this stuff that goes on in the West, I just thought it was our propaganda, choosing rare examples and exaggerating it. But from what you're telling me, it's actually quite real. So this is the state that we're in. I'm not saying that, it's better abroad. I'm saying that next time, you see these same people saying, look over there, don't forget what they have done and what they're advocating to do.
Exactly.
It's all projection.
And let's not be holier than thou, because as you pointed out earlier, Sly News think that, the wife of a Conservative politician should literally be locked up for years on end. This poor woman's probably going to get 3 years or something, because the bloke who just copy and pasted her post on X to get to prove a point, he got locked up for 3 years. Seriously. It is dystopian. And I know you say it's not a laughing matter, Tom, and I do agree. But sometimes I feel like you have to laugh or you would cry. So Andrew Lawrence is just doing God's work at the moment on that front. He's the brilliant comedian. And I wanted to show you his latest take on Two Tier Keir.
No matter how much people can't stand me, I'm going to get on with the important business of turning this country into a miserable third world bin fire. There are two strands to our strategy. Firstly, anything you enjoy, we're going to ban it. Whether it be smoking outdoors or posting spicy memes on Facebook, we'll come down on you with the full force of the law. Secondly, anything you own, we're going to tax it. We're going to tax it not once, not twice, but at least 3 times in various creative ways. What you'll soon find is the harder you work, the more money you earn, the poorer you get. What could be better for the economy than disincentivising hard work through crippling taxation? Realistically, someone's got to pay for all the asylum seekers, and it may as well be you. We're assessing every element of your life, and whatever we come across, we're going to either ban it or tax it. During the election campaign, you asked yourselves, who is most likely to steal all our money and erode our civil liberties? And then you voted for Labour, and we're going to give you exactly what you asked for. Things are going to get worse before they get better.
Oh, and they have, haven't they? They've got worse. They've got a hell of a lot worse. But thank you for being two people who help keep me sane during all of this. The independent journalist Tom Sullivan, Reform UK's Howard Cox. Howard, quick word, by the way, on Fair Fuel UK. So I know you're campaigning hard to make sure the government doesn't increase fuel duty, but it's not looking good, is it?
No, it's not looking good. And, I'd hope your viewers will actually, sign up to Fair Fuel UK to actually help me fight this. Because after
it's
15
so important.
Yeah, fairfueluk.com. Sign up. It's free. And more to the point, the most important thing is that you will be worse off in 2 months' time to the tune of about, if you've got an average size car, you're going to pay £5 more to fill it up. And that's, they're not putting up taxes, but guess what? They are putting up taxes.
But they are. No. I so support the work that you do, because if we thought that there was a war on the motorist under the previous government, this is now a full-on attack on the motorist. And what Sadiq Khan is planning in London, which is so bad, is about to be rolled out all across the country. Angela Rayner actually admitted it before the election and then tried to roll back. But we're about to see some terrifying things. So keep up the fight. We will follow it, of course. Howard Cox of Reform UK and Fair Fuel, and the independent journalist Tom Sullivan. Fabulous superstar panel today. Now, major breaking royal news. Prince Harry has responded to the rumours, these really significant rumours, that he is planning a return to the UK without Meghan Markle. Who better to speak to than our outspoken royal mastermind, Angela Levin. She's up in just one moment. Of course, she is Prince Harry's biographer. First, though, you know what's so important about being independent is I will only ever tell you about products that I use and truly believe in and think can improve your life. And one of those products is Verso. So when I entered my 40s, I decided that it was really important to stay healthy and worry about aging, actually, which we all worry about, right? So I'm doing the things that you do when you enter your 40s because you realize that it's harder to keep the weight off. So I'm exercising virtually every day, taking my nutrition seriously with the 16-8 fast, but it's only got me so far. And what I learned is that scientists like David Sinclair have proven we can actually reverse aging with interventions that go beyond healthy habits. So I was looking for a product that I knew would enhance everything I was already doing, but was also backed up with solid evidence. That product is Cell Being by Verso. It is scientifically proven with ingredients that fight the effects of aging by increasing NAD+ levels. Now, NAD+ is so important because it is the stuff that powers every cell in your body. I've been taking the product for a number of months now. Right at the start of my day, it's been genuinely transformative. Fasting's easier, the fat's down, I'm eating less too, and that's due to its blood sugar regulating effects, which lead to fewer cravings. Sleep as well. Cell Bean will actually help you sleep better. So this product in the long term will take years off your life. I would love you to experience the same thing. And Verso publishes third-party testing from each batch produced to guarantee that you are getting what you pay for. Now, Verso is giving you an amazing offer today. So if you head right now to buy.ver.so/outspoken, you will save 15% on your first order. All you need to do is use the coupon code OUTSPOKEN. I've put the link, by the way, in our YouTube and Rumble description, so you can just click on it through there. But I will repeat the address as well, buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code OUTSPOKEN. But now, back to the show, and it's time for my Royal Mastermind. And Angela Levin, Prince Harry's biographer, joins me on what has been an extraordinary 48 hours in terms of the developments that we have been tracking on the Sussexes, Prince Harry and Meghan, for some time. Angela and I have been among the first to reveal lots of the strains in this marriage. But today, Angela, we get the obvious denial, the PR denial in the Daily Telegraph from Prince Harry and Meghan saying, no, nothing to see here. Everything's fine. I'm so happy in America. My marriage is so happy even though I never smile, and there's no way I'm coming back to the UK. Angela, what's the truth?
Well, I mean, that is so phony that you do have to laugh. I mean, each sentence is a nonsense. You know, I've made such marvelous friends. You know, this is like a child, isn't it? I mean, it's just absurd. And I think he's going through a very, very difficult time. And to try to pretend it's not happening is ridiculous. It's very interesting. I think I might have a sort of very odd view, but I think it's possibly right. It's that the whole thing has been PR. They need desperately to keep them in the public's eye, and they keep dropping off because things don't work. You know, nobody wants to work with them. They don't. They're not having any good deeds that are working. So I think they have said, well, to their PR, you've got to sort me out. We've got to get going and things. And so it's said that by very good journalists, it's not any old person, it's somebody who really investigates and looks hard at things, that he wants to come back. And he's got a whole load of friends going right back to his school, plus one aide to help him convince his father that he should be back. So they do that. And the result of that among the population in this country was huge. We don't want him, absolutely don't want him. He's been so awful, abominable to the king, knowing that he's got cancer, abominable to Camilla.
Catherine.
Yeah.
Well, and Camilla, yeah.
Catherine, William, everybody you can imagine. And he now wants to come in and be part of the royal family. It's very dangerous. You don't trust him because he sells things, conversations, anything he can say to TV people or to journalists, and you can't have that. And William particularly wants to keep him away because he said that one of his great aims in life, apart from getting protection, is that to look after his children, bring them up for him and Catherine. So obviously, William said, absolutely not. And he said, well, I've got to make sure that they're not going to be like me, a spare. And so I'll take the two younger ones. And William says, you will not. And so the answer to that is Harry said, well, I'm going to keep trying. And William's got to make sure he keeps children away from him, because children can be convinced about all sorts of things. And I think that's a absolutely vile, awful thing to say to your brother, who's doing a marvellous job. Those three children are absolutely delightful. He doesn't feel he needs to do it over Prince Charles because he's next in line. And he knows very well, Harry, that the heir will get a different sort of upbringing. But anyway, so it's just not going to happen. So what happens next? So there then is a PR who's saying to Telegraph, which is really funny, that actually it's not, he absolutely doesn't want to go back and start doing work for the royal family. It's absolutely not. He's could be more happy in life at the moment. So you think, what's going on? And I think it's just playing. The more they're in the public eye, the more they like it. And it's a sort of game. It's a very nasty, unpleasant game. And I feel very sorry for the writer in the Telegraph who had to take down all this absolute nonsense about how wonderful his life was. You can see it. I mean, anybody who thinks their life is wonderful does not want to be pushed around and pulled if he's talking a minute longer with somebody. If Meghan's not happy, he's not going to never ever have the chance to invent things. It's always her. He was very upset that he was a spare, and now he's really a nothing, isn't he? Because she treats him like that. It's abominable, but she does. I mean, he was sitting at a table in Colombia, away from everybody who was serious and important, and he was just there left to eat his meal alone. And at one point, Meghan turned around, gave him a big smile. That was it. Carry on. She'd turn away and do everything like that. But it's all in our own eyes. It's what we see. Now, if couples have a bit of a row or they don't want something going on, you do it behind closed doors. It's not nasty. You just deal with it. But Meghan couldn't care less. She's in the open, and she doesn't seem to think that there's anything wrong to laugh at her husband, to tell him off, to put him at the back of a crowd of people so that you can just see from his chin upwards. And, you know, it's just extremely unkind. And that lady there with the green trousers who is translating for Harry, you know, he put his arm round the chair, which men have done in cinemas if they want to encourage you to get a bit closer. And you know, Meghan was absolutely furious, and she got sacked. So we all sort of saw that. It was
well, indeed, because the thing is, Angela, you know Harry, which I think is really critical. You spent a lot of time with him, and you know when he's happy, and you know when he's sad, and you know when he's angry. I've also covered Harry for a very, very long time, and the Columbia tour, it reminded me, do you remember the early 90s when Charles and Diana would go away? And I think one of the tours was to Korea, and they were trying to pretend everything was okay in the marriage, but the body language sometimes can't lie. And Columbia, I'm not saying it was that bad, but there were moments where you could actually feel Harry's misery. And the fact that he is back in touch with these friends, I think, is really significant, Angela, because remember, these are the friends in the UK who Meghan insisted that he ghosted. She didn't want him having the contact with the old friends, the toff friends, the friends from school, the friends from the military. So the fact that he's back in contact with them, it's quite a clear sign, I think, that he's no longer completely under Meghan's spell. Do you agree?
I don't know. I think he can play around with them as well. He can say that he needs them. He wants to have his old friends with him as well. But actually, moving on to stage 2 of creating an impression, he just cuts them off. I mean, we know that Meghan has very good friends for as long as she needs them, and often leaves them behind when she thinks she's got all she wanted from them. I think Harry could easily have picked this up, and he goes to the friends who are probably delighted to hear from him, but then don't want to actually try and force the king to take him back into the royal family, for them to go in there and try and help Harry out. It's absolutely absurd. The man's going to be 40 in a couple of weeks, and it's up to him to handle it. I think that is just a sort of a joke. And you can see he doesn't really care about people now in the way that he did. You know, you do say, I know him quite well. I spent 15 months with him, and a lot of time I was with him, seeing him with other people who were damaged in some way, physically or mentally. And he was brilliant. He really cared for them. You could see it on his face. But I don't see that facial joy of looking after somebody.
He looks miserable. I mean, you said on the show last week, you actually think he needs to seek some help because he looks so sad. But what is annoying me, Angela, is that the Daily Mail, for some reason, has decided to take on Harry's cause lately. They seem to want to rehabilitate him, even though he is suing them. And I do wonder if the two things are connected. I do wonder if the Daily Mail is trying to get Prince Harry to drop the court case. Because I was particularly furious by this column by A.N. Wilson, who is putting the most ridiculous pressure on Prince William to put everything to one side, to forget everything that Harry said about him and Catherine, and revealing him to be, incorrectly in my view, some sort of violent bully. And now the Daily Mail is putting all of this pressure on William that he has to grow up, he has to be the bigger man, he has to move on. Well, I'm sorry, Angela, why? Why should William do that? This only happened a few months ago, and Harry hasn't even apologised.
Well, I completely agree with you. I was cringing when I read it. I couldn't actually believe that he could write that. And it was a load of nonsense, because he was saying, why doesn't he do what his mother did and not complain about everyone? It's completely different. If somebody annoyed the Queen, she kept it quiet, or it was through her aides that she would say something. But this is what incredibly nasty that Harry's been saying about him and Catherine. And the other thing that I find absolutely appalling is that this piece came out while Catherine is still not well, and William is obviously worried. He's worried as an heir. He's worried about his father, who's still being treated for cancer, and how you can actually expect somebody who's behaving brilliantly and doing so well and tries to keep everybody else satisfied when he talks to them. You can't believe that you should add that to him. I don't believe that William should do anything, really. I think he's behaving very well. He doesn't want Harry near his children, and he doesn't want to see him. He thinks it's been appalling, and I think it is. And the way that it's he sort of puts it that this is his job, this is what he should do, because he's the older one and he should put it right. Now, you can't put it right with someone who actually won't change and who has views on the royal family that are absolutely shocking. He said that William was trapped, and he said as well, Catherine, just because she was what everybody expected within a royal family, whereas he
and
fell
not true either.
No.
That's
No.
thing.
You can see that. They're lovely together. And they spent a long time together before they got engaged, so she would really know what life would be like.
Yeah. And William may have had some reluctance in his early days about taking on royal duty, but he is very committed to the cause now, and he's a big believer in the monarchy. And it's not true to say that he's trapped. But this whole thing, Angela, is being called Operation Bring Harry In From the Cold. And it seems very clear to me that Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, is quite central to all of it. And the revelation from People magazine today, and again, this was very clearly another PR leak from Harry's team, is that Harry actually stayed with Earl Spencer at Althorpe, which is, of course, the ancestral home of Princess Diana, during the recent visit to be at Lord Robert Fallow's funeral. Now, the quote to People magazine, I mean, it's clearly from someone pro-Harry. He was on remarkably good form, they say. You could tell he was very pleased to see everyone, and he was very pleased that he had come over. But it certainly seems clear to me that Earl Spencer, Diana's brother, is one of these people who is trying to bring Harry in from the cold. What do you make of it?
Well, I mean, if you remember when he spoke, he wanted to give a speech at the funeral for Diana. And he said there that he would make it his responsibility to look after the two boys. That was not very kind on Charles, who was absolutely devastated at that time. But he said that, and I think quite possibly he's found that this is the right time when Charles is weak and Catherine is weak and William is busy, that he can get him under his arm. But it won't last, because I know him very well, and he gets very angry very quickly, and I think that they could
Harry or Earl Spencer?
Earl Spencer. He's a difficult man because he, like Diana, had a very, very bad childhood. He was abandoned, and his father actually used to hit his mother, and I think it was very difficult for him, and he used to bite himself, and Diana also used to bite herself or cut herself. And I think he's quite damaged from those early days as well. And I think he would be happy to see Harry every now and then. But I don't think he wants to take that on his own shoulders, not least because he's going through, I think it's his third
divorce. Yeah. And Angela, the thing is that I know Earl Spencer did present himself as the hero at the funeral in 1997, and don't get me wrong, it was a famous eulogy that will go down in history as one of the world's most famous eulogies, and it was a pitch-perfect delivery. But the reality is he had had a very tempestuous relationship with Diana, and in the weeks and months before her death, I believe they were hardly even speaking.
Because she asked if she could have one of the cottages on the grounds, and he said no. And so the poor girl didn't know where to go, actually, and I think that made her very unhappy. But he just wouldn't let her stay there. I don't know why, but he didn't, and she was very upset about it. So he's got worries about Diana. I think he did love her a great deal when they were little, because she took over the mother role because their mother went off to Scotland with she had a new boyfriend, and Diana thought it was her responsibility. The only thing she couldn't do, she said, was get out of bed when he was crying at night because she was very scared of going in the dark. It's a tragic thing, isn't it?
It is. And it is very sad. It is very, very sad. But I just think it's interesting that those siblings also had a fallout in the same way that William and Harry did. But look, Angela, before we move to the after show, just to be clear, you do not see a path back for Harry in any way to royal life in the UK.
I hope not. I can't say what I see, but I really hope they will ignore this. And they have been quiet lately. They've got on with their own lives and concentrated on getting well. And I think you get enough of Harry because he has had most of his calls have been shouting and demanding. He's very hard now. He used to be very soft, and now he's very, very hard. And I don't think that they're ready for that. And I think the dangers of what he might do, you cannot be half in, half out. And it was said that Harry would stay half an hour in the UK and then go back to America the other half. You can't do that. Is that the only times you want to see children? Just over 6 months. How are you going to succeed anywhere like that? It's nonsense. It's all made up.
Yeah, and I think to be shouting and demanding of your elderly father, who is trying to be the King of England and receive very serious cancer treatment, I'm sorry, that says a lot about what sort of human being you've become, Angela.
It is. And actually, what I do think, if he wants to change it and to start making himself more accessible, then he should take his biography and make sure that he deletes everything that's nasty in that.
Spare, because he could do that, Angela. He could do that because the paperback is coming out. Actually, that is such a good point. Put your money where your mouth is, Harry. Delete all of the lies about William. Delete all of the lies about Catherine. Delete all of the vile things you said about your father and Camilla. And he won't do that.
Yeah, well, also, he can absolutely help himself by taking out the number of people he killed in Afghanistan.
And the number of time he took illegal drugs in America. Where that's,
yes, and all that come out.
That legal issue.
I don't know what they would say, but the thing is, people have said, oh, there's not another chapter. But actually, if it goes to becoming a paperback, you can lose a chapter. You can take things out. There are people there who edit, and you can just write them out. That's a rather funny thing to say, write it out, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Okay, Angela Levin, look, do stand by. Don't go anywhere because we have much more royal news from you coming up in the uncancelled after show. You know, it's very important to me that we have a safe space not patrolled by big tech, because on big tech, censorship and control runs deep. So that's why I've launched www.outspoken.live. It is our membership section where you get half an hour of extra content every weekday, every single weekday. So at this stage, what we do is we come off YouTube, we come off Rumble, we move to our own platform to continue our conversation with Angela in the uncancelled after show. All you have to do is register at www.outspoken.live, enter your email address. Then the cost is £5 a month. Do you know that's the cost of like less than the cost of a cup of coffee now in lots of places in London and Manchester, which I know is ridiculous. And what it allows me to do is continue to make this show. So thank you so much for your support. Remember to subscribe and turn on the notifications. We are back every weekday, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you. I hope to see you on the after show with more from the brilliant Angela Levin.